Hi everyone, this is another tutorial looking at using up your graphic 45 papers in lots of different ways, and there are lots of different ways of tackling your graphic 45 stash. If you're like me, you're a bit of a hoarder, as you can see, and I like to get the most out of my papers, tend to use them for my more personal projects, and I just love their versatility, and I'm hoping to show that to you today. So I've posted recently a card using up leftover papers, and this is about looking at the different elements again and turning beautiful elements into beautiful cards, as you can see here. So I'm going to talk to you about the way that I designed it, the way that I looked at this, so that you can look at your papers in the same way. Now, so I'm starting out with a card base that measures 11.5 inches by 8 inches, and then I've scored it in half at 5 3/4, and I've chosen a card base to complement the papers that I am choosing to use. Now, one of the beautiful things about Graphic 45 is all of their prints are easy to mix and match together, and you get beautiful results and very many different combinations time after time. I'm going for a real girly, lacy look. I love this paper. Most of these elements, I think nearly all of the elements except for one, are from the Couture collection. I'm not going to name papers because it's all about looking at your stash and doing what I'm doing here, seeing what goes together. Look at the card design that I'm showing you and see if you can make it with a different combination of papers. Saying that, if you have the Couture collection, you are more than welcome to make this design exactly as I'm going to be showing it to you today. One of the other things that come in a Graphic 45 kit is, or a paper pad, is frames. They tend to come on the page that has the 6, I don't know what to call them, journaling cards. They could be project life cards, but they are great elements. They've always got some kind of frame, so that's always great to use on a card. And instead of the element that's in the centre of the frame, I'm going to cut that away and I'm going to stamp my own sentiment, and that will make this element part of my card design. So far we're looking at picking a base card that complements and frames the papers you're going to be using on top of it, and you're looking for an accent colour. So my accent colour is red with the black, and I've also then going to be making a feature from the lacy paper and obviously the frame that I'm going to take from the journaling cards. Now, as I was doing this, apart from messing up the edge of my card and having to trim that down neatly, I realised that I just want my proportions to be exact for the dimensions of the frame. So you can see here, that's what I'm doing. I'm just making sure that I'm going to end up with an even border. So I had to trim a little bit off the top or the bottom of the card so that I get a nice even border all the way around, just to get my proportions correct. So I ended up with a card front that measured 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. And after that, every time that you see me creating a very fine frame, I've decreased the measurements, as I'm doing here, by 3/16 of an inch. So the original measurement was 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I'm cutting this red paper 3/16 of an inch shorter. And that way I get a lovely fine black frame around the red patterned paper. And I'm cutting a second piece exactly the same way, because that is going to go on the inside. As you know, I like to make the inside of the card look as gorgeous as the outside. And then this stripy frame is the one that I've decided to use. There are normally 6 to choose from, and if you've bought a paper pad, then you get 2 or 3 sheets of those particular cards, so it's great for matting and layering and perhaps decoupaging certain elements that you want to use. So now I'm cutting a piece of the black lacy, and again I'm just coming down another 3/16 of an inch. So you can see I'm going to have a double matting effect once I put these two pieces together. I'm going to have a black, red, and then the main feature paper on the card. So you can see how this is taking shape, and it was at this point that I realised I need more of this red paper, and because I'm using up the odds and ends of my paper collections and I've used them for many other projects, I've decided to make the most out of my paper by using a technique called gutting. So I'm taking that centre section out, as there's only a little tiny piece of this red paper showing once I put the lacy paper on top. I only need a little frame, and you can see I've just cut a 1/2 inch frame, and that allows me to remove the centre section of that paper and no one will ever know, unless they watch this video of course. I'm going to do exactly the same on the inside piece. So I'm just using my ruler, and this is where a gridded ruler comes in great. And actually I've just realised it's not a 1/2 inch, it's 3/8 of an inch wide frame. There we go. And I'm going to attach that exactly the same way. You could be using double-sided tape, but I prefer to use my Cosmic Shimmer Glue. And then again, I'm attaching that lovely lacy, very girly paper. You can see here the card starting to take shape, and this is why I removed the centre section, because I want to be able to mount the frame with that red and really make that frame pop from the background. Okay, so you can see here that I'm starting to get this cardstock to the right size to frame my card. So you can either go the measuring route and add 3/16, or you can do as I'm doing here and just use the frame as the base and then trim away the excess paper. So here's another tip. I've cut out a second frame from one of the other journaling cards, and that is the one that I'm going to use on the inside of my card. Now, there was an element on this top corner where there was some stamps and things overlapping the frame, and I didn't really want those, so I'm going to cover it up with some fussy cut roses that I cut from one of the other sheets. So it's all about looking at the elements. Graphic 45 are very, very good at giving you lots of pieces of paper that you can fussy cut and bring life to your designs. So you can see here, this is how this frame is setting up, and by adding those roses, no one will ever know that there used to be a little stamp collage there, and it's going to match my card perfectly. So this is going to be my inside frame, and you can see how I've cut away the centre so that it now has a red frame inside and out, so to speak. You can see I'm working at night time, so my camera or lighting in my room always makes things look a little bit more yellow in the evening. You can always tell what time of day that I'm working by the lighting of the video. Now I'm choosing to just cut a couple of the leaves away from these fussy cut elements, just to make sure that I've got plenty of room to be able to add a sentiment to the inside of the card, as well as allow myself to sign it and send it to whoever it may go to in the future. So if it turns out that your frame is starting to look a little bit small and not allowing you enough room to do this, you can look at the design and take away some of that inside area. I had a little bit of leeway on the black area of the frame, so I've cut that away, and again I'm just carefully cutting around my fussy cut roses that are going to embellish this inside piece. So you can see how things are building up, and I've got this little piece from Curtain Call to add my background. And this will be the area where I can stamp my greeting and where I can sign this card in the future. So I'm going to cut it just slightly smaller than the frame so that you can't see it over the edge when I put this together. And I'm going to cut a piece of the same paper for the front frame that's going to go on the card. So I'm starting to put this together now. So at this point I also decided, as well as the red, which I'm going to make slightly finer, I'm going to have a black card frame as well. And I always think the more frames and matting and layering that you've got, the more luxurious things start to look. Actually, if I'd had any pale coloured embossing powders, I might have chosen to emboss my greeting on the black background because it does look rather lovely against those dramatic red roses, but I don't have that, so I'm going to carry on with my original theme. Don't forget, it's always okay to change your mind. Nobody ever knew there was a plan A. All they see is the end result. I'm just removing that black card from behind those roses, and you can see now I've got a lovely frame ready for the centre of my card. So adding some glue and attaching that into place. And remembering to attach my roses to mask that corner. And I'm going to put that to one side while I work on exactly the same process for framing the frame that's going to go on the front of the card. So when you're working with Graphic 45, you can make all sorts of little embellishments from the fussy cut parts, or the parts of the design that you can fussy cut. That makes more sense. And there were some little jewellery pieces in the Couture collection, and I've got a little idea to make them look like actual jewellery rather than pictures of jewellery. So I'm fussy cutting 2 of those pieces, thinking that I'm going to use them to further embellish the card. I'm just using my craft knife to remove all those little tiny pieces so that all I'm left with are the pieces of jewellery. I wanted to make these look quite glamorous. I didn't have any teeny tiny white gems. I could have really studied these with those. So I've used a gem for the feature gem, the sort of biggest gem on the piece, and then I'm going to use some sparkly stickles to give a little bit of shimmer to the stones on these images. So just gently dotting the stickles onto the piece, and once that's dry I'm going to go over the whole thing with a layer of glossy accents. You can see just carefully dotting a little bit of bling where the stones are on these 2 little pieces of jewellery. Now the sentiment that I used, I couldn't use as a full stamp, so you can see a little tip on how to make it fit the design and miss the roses on the frame. So I've just traced around the inside of the frame, and then I removed one of the leaves, which is what you can see here, just to give myself a little bit more room. So I've got the outline of where the frame will sit, and now I'm going to ink up my stamp. So I'm using a Versamark ink pad and embossing with a black detail Cosmic Shimmer embossing powder. And you can see I use the post-it note to mask part of the sentiment as I inked, and you can see here I've got make a wish your, and once you've set that with your heat gun you can then mask or clean your stamp and mask off the other section, or the section that you've just stamped of your design. A little bit off camera here, inking up, and because I forgot to clean my stamp, which is why I told you to clean yours, I have to use the post-it note to mask the actual greeting, and then positioning the second part of this quote a little bit further down in the panel. So I made the quote fit the area that I had within the frame. So just a little tip so that you can do the same if you need to. So make a wish, your dreams are waiting. So coming back out so you can see exactly what I'm doing. The happy birthday stamp fit perfectly in the area that I had left, so I didn't need to do any magic masking to make this one fit. It's all about making sure that I get a great emboss. Now if your stamping's not up, you know, perhaps a little bit prone to the odd mistake, then don't fit the background paper in behind the frame until you've stamped it, and then glue it into position. So that's what I did on my frame that's going to go on the front of the card, but I trusted that I was going to get a good stamp on the second piece. By not attaching the frame, it also means you can move it about a little bit if you need to. So this stamp set is by Creative Expression, so they're a sample design and they are called Steampunk Dreams, so I'm actually being quite good at putting them away. So nice stamp set, got lovely elements on it. Actually, even they would work well, those butterflies, with some of the steampunk Graphic 45 designs, so I'll remember that for another card design in the future. Okay, so we've talked about how we can mix and match all those lovely patterns from Graphic 45, and another thing, although I've used Couture collection apart from this curtain call piece that's in the background of the frame, you can mix and match the collections as well. You will always find other papers that coordinate with sort of the remnants of collections that you've had a lot of use out of, so don't throw them away. You don't have to work it within the same collections. You can look at other elements and other patterns and you're sure to find wonderful combinations in these papers. It's the thing that I love most about Graphic 45, the versatility. And you can see here now I'm using the fact that I've got other frames with the same design on to fussy cut some more elements to bring more of those gorgeous roses into my design. This time I'm going to add them on the inside at the corners, so opposite corners to more or less where they were on the photo frame, and then I'm sitting them on the outside of the card. And who wouldn't want to open a card with a gorgeous inner like that? Actually, it would make a good outer if I folded the card the other way. And again, I'm going to fussy cut some more roses to do a similar thing on the front of the card. So because these roses have got flat edges where they've been sat on the frame, it's going to dictate sort of the positions that I'm going to put them in on the frame just a little bit. So first things first, I'm attaching the frame. And then I'm going to create a little sort of necklace effect with a piece of green ribbon. I've matched the green to the leaves of the flowers as near as I can, and thinking about where I might add those extra elements at this point. And you can see these are my little jewelled pieces. So decisions, decisions. I like to use a strong double-sided tape when I'm attaching my ribbon, and I'm going to do this in two parts. So I'm going to create a kind of necklace look, a ribbon choker look at the top of my card with this ribbon. So I'm just being a little bit careful to make sure that this ends up in the centre point of the card. And then I'm going to trim away that excess ribbon. I'm not going to fold it over, I'm going to trim it away, and then I'm going to add just a little touch of my PVA glue, which will stop those ends fraying, and because it dries clear you will hardly notice it at all. So that's where my little jewel is going to sit, and then I'm looking at where I'm going to put my fussy cut elements to finish off the front of the card. And then it's time to start gluing things down. Now, although this card is going to look very dimensional once it's finished, it actually is quite flat for posting. So apart from a couple of gems, everything is down flat, and you can see I'm deliberately leaving the edges of the flowers and the edges of the elements that I'm sticking down free, and there's a reason for my doing this, because I'm going to be using glossy accents afterwards, and I want them to, as they dry, have a little bit of movement, and that will create an extra element of dimension on my card. I'm thinking about where to place this second little gem. I think I'm happy with it there. Just adding a little bit of glue under my ribbon. The fold in the ribbon was pushing the little necklace piece forward. So how gorgeous does that look? Now I didn't like that great big gem, so I'm just switching it for a smaller one. It's just a little bit less in your face before I start work with the glossy accents. And then I'm going to flood all of those gorgeous roses and leaves with a layer of glossy accents. Now when you're doing this with your glossy accents, don't forget to keep the nozzle of the bottle immersed in the puddle of glossy accents that you're creating, because this will help you avoid getting air bubbles into the mix. You might get the odd one normally when you sort of stop and start, but they're easily got rid of with a fine pin. And as well as glossy accenting the roses, I'm also adding a layer of that shine to those jewellery pieces. Always be on the lookout for little extra embellishment that might be just sitting on your desk waiting to happen. Look at that piece of green ribbon on the right. I just wanted to add a little bit more bling onto the card. I thought I might add some sparkles into my lacy paper. Thought it detracted a little bit, but there's something missing. I just wanted another couple of gems somewhere, but they need to be grounded in the design somehow. And then I spot the piece of ribbon. It happened to have a little bit of tape on it from where I trimmed it away from the ribbon at the top, and what do you know, it'll make the perfect little place to sit a couple of gems. Bring a little bit of that green satin further down into the design. Now I bet you thought that was going in the bin. So I'm just sticking it here, and then 2 little dots of glossy accents and 2 little gems, and I'm calling that finished. So a little bit careful here while the glossy accents, just want to move that down a little bit, wasn't quite in the middle. While the glossy accent is drying, being careful trying to show you inside and out, but wait for the photos. Much safer to do it this way. And you get the full colour, because I've taken this outside next to my ivy and taken the shot. And how beautiful does that look? It would have made a gorgeous card front, but it is the inside of the card that makes it a really luxurious card to give to someone special. And it looks very, very romantic and very, very girly with all those red roses and lace. And really, I hope you think that I've made the most of those papers. I hope I've given you lots to think about and lots of different ways to use your gorgeous Graphic 45 papers. So until the next video, don't forget, if you've enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, and it really does help me out and lets me know I'm on the right track with the videos that I'm creating. Until next time, thank you for watching. So if you love Graphic 45, why not check out my Graphic 45 playlist by clicking on the I card above, or check out my YouTube channel and find it there. Lots of ideas for using up your Graphic 45 gorgeous papers, including a tour of this piece that I made for a Graphic 45 audition a few years ago now. I didn't get through, but I will keep trying, and you'll find lots of Graphic 45 goodness on this playlist.